Heaven's Gate. In 1997, a quiet mansion in California became the scene of one of the strangest mass deaths in modern history. 39 people, men and women, were found lying neatly in their beds, dressed in identical black clothes and Nike sneakers. Beside each body was a bag, a few dollars in cash, and a note about leaving Earth. They were members of a group called Heaven's Gate. It all started in the 1970s with Marshall Applewhite, a former music teacher, and Bonnie Nettles, a nurse. The two met in a hospital and became convinced they were chosen by higher beings. They claimed Earth was about to be recycled, and that salvation meant leaving this planet to join an extraterrestrial civilization aboard a spaceship. At first, they traveled across the U.S., recruiting followers. They promised freedom from pain, fear, and death. Just a new level of existence. People who joined had to give up everything: family, money, even their names. They lived a strict, isolated life. No individuality, and no contact with the outside world. Every decision, from what to eat to what haircut to get, was controlled. By the mid-90s, the group moved into a mansion near San Diego. Around this time, they became obsessed with the Hale-Bopp comet, which was visible from Earth in 1997. They believed a spaceship was hiding behind it, waiting to take them to the next level. But they thought their human bodies couldn't make the trip. They had to shed their containers. In March 1997, they carefully planned their final act. Over several days, they consumed a deadly mix of phenobarbital and vodka, lay down, and covered themselves with purple cloths. Each group helped prepare the next, in a calm, ritualistic process. Their website, still online today, explained that they hadn't died, only transitioned to a higher plane. The tragedy shocked the world. These were not violent people. They weren't coerced in the traditional sense. They believed with absolute conviction that they were ascending to something greater, and that's what makes Heaven's Gate so unsettling. It shows how far belief, isolation, and a charismatic leader can take people away from reality. Aum Shinrikyo. Aum Shinrikyo, meaning supreme truth, was a Japanese doomsday cult founded in 1984 by Shoko Asahara. The group began as a yoga and meditation movement, attracting followers from Japan's elite universities and professionals who sought spiritual enlightenment. Asahara mixed Hindu and Buddhist teachings with apocalyptic Christian prophecies, claiming he was Christ reincarnated and destined to survive an upcoming world war that would destroy humanity. His charisma and claims of supernatural powers drew thousands of followers, who donated money and surrendered their lives to the cult's strict control. Over time, Aum Shinrikyo became more militarized. The group amassed weapons, built chemical laboratories, and experimented with biological agents like anthrax. They sought to trigger Armageddon, believing only members of Aum would be spared. Their most infamous act came on March 20th, 1995, when members released sarin gas on the Tokyo subway during rush hour. 13 people died, and over 6,000 were injured. The attack shocked Japan and exposed the cult's deep infiltration into society. Scientists, engineers, and even government officials were members. After the subway attack, police raids uncovered stockpiles of weapons, chemicals, and evidence of earlier murders, including those of critics and former members. Shoko Asahara and several senior cult leaders were arrested, tried, and eventually executed in 2018. Though Aum Shinrikyo was officially banned, remnants of the group still exist under new names, such as Aleph and Hikari no Wa, monitored closely by Japanese authorities. The cult remains one of the most chilling examples of how religious extremism, combined with scientific expertise and absolute obedience, can lead to catastrophic violence and mass manipulation. The restoration of the Ten Commandments of God. The movement for the restoration of the Ten Commandments of God from Uganda. It's a story that started with faith and promises of salvation, but ended in one of the deadliest cult disasters the world has ever seen. The movement for the restoration of the Ten Commandments of God was founded in Uganda in the late 1980s by Credonia Murinde, who claimed to receive visions from the Virgin Mary, and Joseph Kibwetere, a former Catholic priest. Their message focused on strict obedience to the Ten Commandments as the only way to avoid God's wrath and survive the end of the world. Members were told to give up their possessions, fast often, and speak only when necessary. Even lying was considered a grave sin that could block salvation. The leaders predicted that the world would end on January 1st, 2000, and their followers prepared eagerly for what they believed would be their ascent to heaven. But when the apocalypse didn't come, Disillusionment spread among the members who had sold everything. To silence dissent and maintain control, the leaders planned what became a horrifying tragedy. On March 17, 2000, hundreds of followers were locked inside a church in Kanungu, Uganda, and the building was set on fire. Later, investigators found mass graves at the group's properties, revealing a death toll of over 700 people. The event was initially thought to be a mass suicide, but it was later determined to be mass murder. The Kanungu massacre remains a haunting reminder of how blind faith and manipulation can turn belief into catastrophe. Branch Davidians. What began as a small religious movement turned into a fiery tragedy that shocked the world and raised questions about faith, control, and government power. The Branch Davidians were a religious sect that broke away from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Their leader, David Koresh, born Vernon Howell, claimed to be the Lamb of God, the chosen one who could unlock the 7 seals from the Book of Revelation under his command. The group settled at Mount Carmel, near Waco, Texas, where Koresh created a closed, self-sufficient community. Koresh taught that the end of the world was near. He convinced his followers to surrender their will to him completely, including their families. He declared himself the only man allowed to have wives, even claiming spiritual marriages with underage girls, saying their children would lead a new divine generation. Meanwhile, the group began stockpiling weapons, preparing for what they believed would be a holy war against the government. In 1993, the ATF tried to raid the compound over illegal weapons, sparking a gunfight that left several dead. What followed was a tense 51-day standoff between the Davidians and the FBI, watched live on TV across America. On April 19, 1993, the siege ended in disaster when fires broke out during an FBI assault, consuming the compound and killing 76 people, including Koresh and many children. The Waco tragedy became a symbol of both government overreach and the devastating power of blind faith. It's a chilling reminder of how charismatic leadership and apocalyptic belief can turn devotion into destruction. The Manson Family. The Manson family was one of the most infamous and dangerous cults in American history. Formed in the late 1960s by Charles Manson, it began as a small commune of disillusioned young people seeking freedom, love, and spiritual meaning during the counterculture movement. However, under Manson's charismatic yet deeply manipulative leadership, the group devolved into a murderous cult that shocked the world. Manson, a failed musician and ex-convict, presented himself as a prophet inspired by apocalyptic visions. He convinced his followers that an impending racial war, which he called Helter Skelter, a phrase borrowed from a Beatles song, would destroy modern society. He claimed that the Manson family would survive this chaos and emerge as leaders of a new world order. Using drugs, psychological manipulation, and sexual coercion, Manson created a community of total obedience centered around himself. In the summer of 1969, Manson directed several followers to carry out a series of brutal murders in Los Angeles to ignite this supposed revolution. The most infamous was the Tate LaBianca murders, where actress Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant, and 6 others were killed over 2 nights. The senseless brutality and bizarre messages left at the scenes stunned the public and symbolized the dark end of the 1960s counterculture. Manson and several of his followers were arrested later that year and convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Manson was sentenced to life imprisonment, where he remained until his death in 2017. The Manson family remains a haunting example of how charismatic manipulation, apocalyptic beliefs, and isolation can transform ordinary people into instruments of terror, demonstrating the extreme dangers of cult psychology and blind devotion. The People's Temple. What started as a movement for equality and love ended in one of the deadliest mass suicides in history. This is the haunting story of the People's Temple and the tragedy of Jonestown. The People's Temple, founded in the 1950s by Jim Jones, began as a progressive Christian movement advocating for racial integration, equality, and social justice. Jones attracted thousands of followers across the United States with his fiery sermons, charisma, and vision of a utopian society free from racism and poverty. However, beneath the surface of idealism lay manipulation, paranoia, and absolute control. Jones demanded unquestioning loyalty from his followers, gradually isolating them from friends and family. As media scrutiny increased and accusations of abuse and financial corruption surfaced, he moved the group to a remote commune in Guyana, South America, in 1977. This settlement, called Jonestown, was presented as a socialist paradise, But in reality, it was a prison-like compound ruled by fear and exhaustion. Life in Jonestown was harsh. Members worked long hours under strict supervision. Communication with the outside world was restricted, and Jones's paranoia deepened. He frequently delivered sermons warning of government conspiracies and imminent attacks. Followers were subjected to loyalty tests and mock suicide drills, conditioning them for what was to come. The tragedy unfolded on November 18, 1978, when U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan visited Jonestown to investigate reports of abuse. As Ryan and several others tried to leave with defectors, they were ambushed and killed by temple gunmen. Shortly after, Jones ordered his followers to drink a cyanide-laced beverage in what he called a revolutionary act. Over 900 people, including nearly 300 children, died that day, one of the largest mass deaths in modern history. The People's Temple stands as a chilling reminder of how idealism, when mixed with manipulation and blind faith in a single leader, can descend into unimaginable horror. Thanks for watching.